Okay, let's get into this. We're diving into something we all do, probably every single day, without a second thought, crossing the street.
Right. It feels so routine, but it's this ultimate shared space where there is a massive amount of risk. It's actually one of the most dangerous things we do on a regular basis.
It's a total paradox. I mean, you have pedestrian crossings, crosswalks, zebra crossings, whatever you call them. They're designed for safety.
And yet, they are these critical points where a fast-moving vehicle and a vulnerable person meet, and the margin for error is just tiny.
So we've been going through a really comprehensive guide that focuses on defensive safety, and we're pulling out the essentials for both drivers and pedestrians.
And our mission today is really to give you that practical knowledge to minimize the risk. We're going to break down some of the sneakier danger zones, get into the surprisingly complex rules of right-of-way.
And the different types of crossings, because being informed, really knowing the rules, that's the core of staying safe out there.
And it all starts with awareness, speed, and just a willingness to yield.
Exactly. And safety starts with seeing danger where you really don't expect it. So let's jump into the first high-risk scenario from the sources. It's a physical thing, and it's all about the blind spot.
Yes, this is the high-risk area when a driver is turning a corner at an intersection. And this isn't just about someone being distracted. It's often just pure geometry.
This is where it gets fascinating. Because of the angle of the turn, a pedestrian stepping off the curb can be completely, and I mean completely, hidden by the pillar that holds up the car's windscreen.
The A-pillar, yeah.
It's a structural part of the car, but at that exact wrong moment, it basically acts like a shield, hiding the very person you need to see.
And that's so critical, because if the driver is, accelerating into that turn, they might not see the pedestrian until it's far too late.
So while drivers need to be aware of that, pedestrians have to understand the other side of this, which the source material called the stopping illusion. That feeling of, I'm at a crosswalk, so I'm safe.
Exactly. You can never, ever assume it's safe to just step out. We know that far too many drivers, unfortunately, just blow through these crossings without even slowing down.
So that caution you feel when waiting for a car to stop, you need to listen to that.
Always. But the risks don't just stop with people breaking the law. What I found really interesting in the sources was the secondary risk. It involves the cars that actually do stop.
The stopped car becomes a projectile.
It's a terrifying scenario.
Yeah.
The source calls it the rear danger. You have a driver who has correctly stopped for a pedestrian, but the car behind them doesn't stop.
Maybe they're distracted, maybe going too fast.
Right. And they rear-end the stopped car, and that car gets shoved violently right into the crosswalk. The pedestrian has absolutely zero warning.
Wow. So as a pedestrian, you almost have to treat the space behind the car that stopped for you as part of the threat.
It requires this multi-layered thinking, which brings us to the non-negotiable checklist for pedestrians. The core steps are simple, but they are vital.
Always use a designated crossing if there is one. Stop at the curb.
And then the classic advice. Look left, right, and then left again. But once you go, you need to move with purpose.
The source says to cross quickly, but walk, don't run.
Yes, running can make you unstable, unpredictable, and stay inside the lines. And of course, the modern rule, get rid of distractions. Phone away, headphones out. Your awareness is your best protection.
That's a perfect transition because the specific rules change completely depending on the type of crossing you're walking toward. So let's get into the taxonomy of crossings.
This is key. We shift from general defensive posture to, specific rules. People think crosswalk, cars stop, but it's much more nuanced.
Okay, let's start with the classic, the one everyone pictures, the zebra crossing.
The black and white stripes. You often see it with those flashing amber lights on poles, the Belisha beacons. They're an immediate signal to drivers that they're approaching a yield area.
So what is the definitive rule here? Because I think this gets misunderstood a lot.
It's actually very clear. Pedestrians have the absolute right-of-way the moment they step onto the crossing, or even if they're clearly waiting to cross. A driver must be prepared to stop.
Okay, so from the simple zebra, we move to the signal systems. The sources talk about the Pelican and the Puffin.
They sound a bit like cartoon characters, but they manage traffic flow in very different ways. They're both activated by a push button.
But the key difference is how they cycle back to green for the cars.
Exactly. Let's start with the Pelican. It's the older system.
And it has that distinctive flashing amber light.
Right. After the light has been red for cars, it starts flashing amber. That tells drivers they can proceed, but only if the crossing is completely clear of pedestrians.
That seems tricky. It's asking the driver to make a judgment call maybe when other cars have already started moving.
Which is precisely why the Puffin crossing was developed. Puffin is actually an acronym: Pedestrian, User-Friendly, Intelligent.
Intelligent how?
It uses sensors, thermal or pressure sensors, to detect if a pedestrian is actually on the crossing or still waiting. It can adjust the signal timing based on that.
And the critical difference is no flashing amber.
No flashing amber phase. It goes straight from red to green for the vehicles. It removes that ambiguity, that judgment call for the driver. The system knows the crossing is clear. It's a huge safety improvement.
That is a fascinating bit of engineering to solve a human problem. Okay, so beyond those, there are also shared spaces.
Yes, we have Toucan crossings, called that because Toucan cross pedestrians and cyclists. They're a bit wider, and the signal will show a little person and a bicycle.
So cyclists don't have to get off their bikes.
Correct. And then for very specialized transport, you have Pegasus crossings.
For horses.
For horse riders, exactly. They're also wider, but the key feature is that the button to activate the signal is positioned much higher up, so a rider can reach it without dismounting.
And the last one on the list is the Hawk Beacon, high-intensity activated crosswalk. This one sequence is not what you'd expect.
It's very counterintuitive for drivers. A pedestrian pushes the button. For the driver, the beacon starts flashing yellow, then goes to solid yellow, then solid red. Pedestrians cross when the light is solid red.
So for pedestrians, the rule is you cross on the red light.
For the driver's red light, yes. Once it's clear, the beacon goes dark and traffic can proceed. It relies on a very clear, mandatory stop.
So this taxonomy is everything. Because the right-of-way isn't some universal rule, it changes completely depending on the crossing.
That is the absolute core of it, knowing when you have the right-of-way and when you don't.
Let's break that down then. The right-of-way and the responsibilities for everyone. At an uncontrolled zebra crossing, we said the pedestrian has the right-of-way once they step out.
Right. But at a signalized one, a Pelican or a Puffin,
Yeah.
you only have the right-of-way on the green walk signal. If it's flashing don't walk or it's solid red, you have to yield.
And then there's the big one, the school crossings.
Absolute control. The right-of-way belongs to pedestrians when the school crossing patrol officer, the lollipop guard, signals it. When that person steps into the road, all vehicles must stop. That signal overrides everything else.
Now let's flip it. The driver's duty. What specific actions do they need to take?
Well, beyond the obvious slow down, pay attention, at a zebra crossing, you must stop if someone is on it or even looks like they're waiting to get on. You can't just edge forward and intimidate them.
And for the older Pelican crossings with the flashing amber light?
Stop on red, of course.
Yeah.
But on that flashing amber, you can only go if the crossing is 100% clear. That's probably the moment of greatest risk. It requires so much vigilance from the driver.
It does. And it brings us to one of the most common things we see on the road. Jaywalking. Can you just cross anywhere?
The sources suggest it's a bit nuanced. I mean, generally, no. You should use a designated crosswalk. In many places, jaywalking is illegal. You can get a ticket.
But the sources also acknowledge that sometimes there just aren't any crosswalks for miles.
Exactly. In some of those situations, crossing midblock might be, as the source puts it, legal but risky.
And this is a huge, but the legal responsibility completely flips, doesn't it?
It completely flips. If you cross without a designated crosswalk, the pedestrian must yield the right-of-way to vehicles. The burden is entirely on you to not interfere with traffic.
So if you have to do it, the sources give a clear guideline.
You have to pick a spot with really high visibility. No blind corners, no crests of hills. Wait for a very safe gap in traffic. And if you can, try to make eye contact with drivers.
And on a big road, cross one direction of traffic at a time.
Use the median, that middle island, as a safe refuge if there is one. Don't try to dash across 4 or 6 lanes at once.
That idea of a safe refuge leads us to our final section. What happens when these systems break? And how do we engineer them to be safer in the first place?
A malfunctioning signal is a huge hazard. For a pedestrian, if you walk up and the light is just dark, you have to be extra vigilant. Look at the vehicle traffic lights. If they're working, follow them. If not,
You treat it like an uncontrolled intersection.
you have to. Cross only when you have a clear view and you are certain it's safe. For a driver, the rule is simple. Slow way down, be cautious, and always yield to a pedestrian who is in the crosswalk. Their safety comes first.
And of course, report it.
Report it immediately to the local authorities.
So let's talk about the long-term solutions. How are engineers making these crossings safer? It seems to be a mix of simple structural changes and high-tech timing.
It is, and that blend is what's so fascinating. On the simple structural side, you have things like high visibility markings, just making the stripes brighter, or using advanced stop lines to make cars stop further back from the crosswalk.
Giving everyone better sightlines. I love the idea of raised crosswalks, too.
So it's basically speed tables. By raising the crosswalk up to the level of the sidewalk, you physically force drivers to slow down. It makes a collision less likely, and if one happens, less severe.
And on those wide suburban roads, the sources really stress the need for pedestrian refuge islands.
Absolutely. Having a safe place to stop in the middle of a multi-lane road is critical. It lets you focus on one direction of traffic at a time.
Okay, so that's the low-tech. What about the high-tech timing solutions?
This is where it gets really innovative. You have things like longer walk phases for, vulnerable users who might need more time. But the real game changer is something called the leading pedestrian interval, the LPI.
The LPI is just brilliant. It directly tackles that turning vehicle blind spot problem we talked about at the start.
It does. The LPI gives pedestrians a head start, maybe 3 to 7 seconds, where their walk signal turns green before the parallel cars get their green light.
So the pedestrians are already in the crosswalk, visible before cars start turning.
Exactly. It makes them so much more visible to turning drivers. It's been shown to dramatically reduce those types of collisions. It's a fantastic fusion of smart engineering and urban planning.
We have covered so much today, from the hidden danger of a car being rear-ended into a crosswalk to the subtle but critical difference between a Pelican and a Puffin crossing.
The bottom line is, whether you're behind the wheel or on foot, safety really depends on this mutual vigilance and, frankly, on knowing the very specific rules for each type of crossing.
And when we connect all this back to how our communities actually spend money on infrastructure, it's clear that safety is an economic choice. We've talked about sophisticated tech like the LPI and simple things like raised crosswalks.
All of which have different costs and different benefits.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to consider. Thinking about the high-speed, multi-lane suburban roads in your own community, and with the goal of getting the biggest safety improvement for the investment. What specific combination of low-tech structural changes, like those refuge islands, and high-tech timing systems like the LPI, do you think provides the best, most cost-effective safety upgrade?
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.